Welcome to Uncomfortable is Okay, where we explore the science, the stories, and the strategies of getting out of your comfort zone, navigating challenge, and doing the hard things that make life worth living. I'm your host, Chris Desmond. Uncomfortable is Okay is brought to you by Health Mentors. Health Mentors is a performance wellbeing company that helps change makers dial in their health and improve their performance in the middle of a chaotic world. We offer one-on-one health mentoring services, as well as a range of workshops and workplace solutions, all the way up to supporting organisations with their wellbeing strategy. You can find out more at healthmentors.nz or get in contact with Chris at healthmentors.nz. Welcome to the Uncomfortable is Okay podcast. Tonight I am joined by Luke McFarlane. Luke and I go a long way back. We met
a few weeks, eh?
Yeah, met in third form back at Thames High School in 1996, I think.
You're pretty close.
Yeah,
close.
around about
I think.
97? Yeah. I was born in, 83? Yeah, sometime around then, mid-90s. back when like everything was cool.
Even rollerblading, but we don't admit it.
No, we didn't have rollerblades, not at all. And Luke is, the reason that I wanted to have a chat with Luke is around the mental health, mental wellbeing space. He's a dude who, well, here tonight, has had his own journey with mental wellbeing, mental health, and figuring it out for himself. And I think, as he freely admits, he's still figuring it out, as am I. But wanted to get him on to have a little bit of a chat. He's recently done something pretty cool with a whole lot of mates in this space, and we'll have a bit more of a talk about it soon. But Luke, first of all, mate, welcome.
Cheers, bro. Good to see you. It's been like we said, a few years. Man, you haven't aged a day.
It's the filter that I put on. It's the light that I've got on behind.
Figured it out yet.
Yeah. That's right. I'll give you some tips afterwards, bro. Mate, for the listeners, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
Yeah, I went to 6 different schools. We moved over a few different regions and eventually settled at Thames for a couple of years. And that's where, obviously, we went to school together. And then, went from there to Hamilton Boys and carried on. We're currently living in the beautiful Bay of Plenty, living the dream. I've got a beautiful wife and 2 young kids and teaching at one of the local colleges over here. So, yeah, it's been good. Loving it.
Nice, mate. What do you remember from your youth that, looking back in hindsight, has kind of steered you on to the point you're at today?
Oh, yeah. It's so many different factors influence you day to day without you even actually really reflecting on them too much. And if you look upon your childhood and your upbringing and consider the things that might steer you in certain ways, there are a couple of things. Like, I obviously had a grandfather who was a teacher and my auntie was a teacher, and I never considered it as a career path until I did a degree at university and then ended up landscaping for a couple of years. And as whilst I was landscaping, digging holes in the rain, I was like, there's got to be a better career than this. And even though I love the summers and I love the practical elements of, paving and concreting and planting out gardens and things, and the sort of sense of reward you get from seeing something you've built and created, digging through clay in the rain sucks. So thought, I'm back to study for a little while, and I've been teaching now for 16 years across a couple of different secondary schools, and it's something that I thoroughly enjoy now.
Epic, mate. That's cool. I didn't realize that you'd gone landscaping for a wee bit. Where was this clay that you were digging?
Oh, look, if you've ever lived in Hamilton, which not too many people admit it, I spent a bit of time there, and horrific winters where the fog lifts at 11 and it sets back down at 2, and you're in the rain for most of the day. And it's just no good.
Yeah. Oh dear. Mate, I want to have a little bit of a talk to you about the Lighthouse Project and kind of the genesis of that. So do you want to tell us what it is, first of all?
Yeah, sweet. So we're a registered charity, but we're not actually a charity in that we are seeking money for ourselves and what we do. It's where our sole purpose is to raise awareness of and funds for grassroots organisations. And it began with, funny enough, you were talking about old guys playing touch and getting injured. All our kids went to the same daycare, and we formed a social touch team from that. And yeah, through that, got to know these boys a little bit better. And sort of one of the boys, his brother had gone through some really dark patches. And then one of the other boys, his mum had been depressed for a number of years, and she's sweet now. But yeah, we sort of all just had these shared experiences, whether it was personal via ourselves or through family members, of these things going on. And one of the boys sort of organized for a couple of us to just catch up for a cold one in the summer, and was like, look, this is the idea I'm floating, what do you reckon? And so it sort of it was just born from there. We started meeting every week, and then registered ourselves, got sponsors on board, and then launched into 2022 as our major fundraising year.
Awesome, bro. How did that conversation start? Like, how did this conversation around mental health come up with some dudes in a touch team? Because it's probably not a common one for most touch teams around New Zealand.
Well, hopefully sooner. Sooner it'll become so. But no, I don't think so. You're right. Two of the boys they'd known each other for so long, and they'd gone to university together. And I guess they just had that really close friendship where they felt they could be real honest with each other. They probably have for a number of years. And then with me, I've only known the boys for a couple of years, but I guess I'm pretty frank with some of my conversations. And so they might have felt that perhaps, I wasn't going to be judgmental or whatever. And so when they first brought me along, they floated the idea. It was just like, cool, I know where these boys are at. And I was able to launch straight into just being honest straight off the bat, which is something I haven't always been in regards to my own mental health. And from there, it was just like, cool. Okay, not cool as in we're experiencing it, but cool in the fact that this dude knows what I'm talking about. He might have not experienced it, but at least he's empathetic because he understands the experience via someone else. And from there, it's like, cool, what are we going to do about this? And that's when we launched into thinking about not the big charities that already do quite well financially. It was about, who are these people that are grassroots that maybe men who struggle might actually just reach out to, or might utilize their services via going surfing or catching up for a feed or whatever. Because these local ones, they must be struggling for coin. And that's how it sort of built from there about, okay, so who are we targeting? Who are we helping? What can we do to help them? How might we sell this concept of grassroots organizations, and how might we market it so that corporate sponsors want to jump on board? How will we spread awareness, and through what channels? And it just snowballed. And we all come from vastly different career pathways. One's a project manager for an engineering firm, one's a finance manager at a bank, and I'm a teacher. But it almost became such a large part of our lives leading into it as we became increasingly busy. But we've just got really supportive wives, so that sort of helped out a lot.
Yeah, that's a massive positive with it. So you guys are looking to support, you guys do support a lot of the grassroots charities, especially around the regions of New Zealand, sort of more outside of the main centres.
Nationwide.
Yeah, epic. And when you were thinking about kind of fundraising opportunities for this, what did you brainstorm before you came up with the grand scheme?
They sort of floated the idea of a couple of different things, like just visiting different oceans, hitting the different geographic points. And it's all like, yeah, cool. But it wasn't until we started thinking about the actual symbolism of what a lighthouse is, and the fact that it's, designed, its core role is to offer awareness and safety, right? And once we started figuring that out, it's like, okay, so where are lighthouses actually located? And they're around a lot of these remote areas around New Zealand. And so we thought, all right, let's tick off as many of these as we can in a certain amount of time. And it was really important to us while we're doing this fundraising tour that it wasn't perceived as a road trip or a holiday. It had to be a test. And thus we tried to push through 6,600 kilometers in 12 days, coast to coast, and north to south. So it was fantastic. Met a lot of wicked people out there in the communities that are doing just outrageously good things off their own backs. And that in itself was probably one of the highlights, just the lift of seeing the energy that people put into their fellow people and what they're willing to do for others. And it was just like, we live in a mean country. Aotearoa is full of really good people. And yeah, that was a highlight.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you start talking to them, you do get to know how many great people there are out there as well. So you guys it was 4 dudes in a camper van hitting, how many lighthouses around New Zealand did you go to?
We hit 24 in the end.
24. Over how many days?
12 days.
12 days.
Yeah.
With a bunch of stops for conversations with local charities and people who run local charities as well thrown in there.
Yeah. And just meeting, all sorts of people along the road. So when we began, we had an understanding of the organizations that were out there and that we were going to support. And then as soon as we sort of even just began on the road, people were reaching out to us and saying, oh, have you heard of these guys? This is what they do, and try and catch up with them. So we had, extras popping up on the daily, and it was just so increasingly busy. For instance, we did Nelson to the Crown Range in Queenstown in a day with, 3 different meetings with different organizations and things, but it just had to push through. It was like 900 Ks and all that, 21 hours. But it was necessary just to meet these people, get through that aspect of the journey, because we were booked out the next day as well. So we just had to push through.
Yeah. How was the discomfort around that? 4 sweaty dudes in a camper van, not a whole lot of sleep, trying to keep to a very tight schedule while you're trying to fit other stuff in there as well.
Oh, look, you learn more and more about yourself, the different sorts of pressures you apply to yourself and the different circumstances you put yourself into, and you learn more about yourself and each other. And there was definitely some moments where there wasn't a lot of chat going on in the camper van, but look, people are good, and you sort of move through things pretty quickly, especially when you've got a common goal. Yeah.
What were some of the revelations that you had about yourself on the trip?
You know what? Like, the more I talked about, because obviously people want to know why you're doing it, and so you sort of goes against everything we're brought up to feel about ourselves, and that when these people were actually asking, like, how are you and what are you up to, you have to be honest. And so the more I guess I practice that, the more I'm comfortable talking about it, and the more you do reflect on what is it that put me there, what is it that got me out of it, what are the things that I need to maintain, what are the things that I can look to explore as I move forward about myself and my balance and things like that. So I guess, having that like forced reflection, I suppose, because you're constantly having to reevaluate yourself and your relationships and the way you interact with others, just because you're having to share. That was probably one of the greatest learning experiences for me personally anyway.
Yeah. And coming out the back of that, do you find that you've been sharing more and talking more and reflecting more because of what you went through on that trip?
Yeah, I guess whether that was, through different media outlets and going through that interview process, and then meeting the organizations, and then meeting people from those organizations, and then, your friends checking on how's things going. And that has been such a shift in the dynamics of friendships that I have, having seen what we've done and listening to me. Like, I'm generally like 99% of the time happy-go-lucky, pretty relaxed, love a good laugh. But for them to hear, I guess, that I've struggled at times, has sort of let them go, shit, things aren't that good for me sometimes too. And you sort of, I'm a firm believer in this. If you begin to role model that honesty sort of comes out in others, because you've set that level of comfort, you hope.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think like with conversations like this, some people have to go first, and the people that go first show that it's safe and that it's okay for everyone else. And I think for people who are in a privileged position, it's easier for us to go first, because we've been through some stuff like this and understood it. And I think then you almost start to have a responsibility to kind of lead the way for some other people, and leading the way looks different for everybody. It's not jumping in a camper van and driving around New Zealand. It's not hosting a podcast. It's not doing a speech after the UFC like we were talking about before. But I think those people that have the willingness to go first, I think are really, really valuable. And another thing I think as well, like we're two, I guess, as you said, like reasonably laid back Kiwi guys who have both had mental health challenges over our lives. And a lot of other dudes that I've talked to that, like, if you look at them from the outside, you'd think, oh, that guy's sweet. He's just chill. Everything's a-okay. But you don't see what's happening below the surface, and you don't see what's really going on behind the scenes for this dude. And I think like that's probably why we have one of the, like, as dudes in New Zealand, it's, I think, one of the reasons that we do have such a high rate of mental health challenges is that we look at everyone else, and like we're probably reasonably typical Kiwi dudes in terms of kind of how we look from the outside. And if all you see is that, then you're like, oh, bro, something's off with me if I feel this way, and everyone else around me is like those guys. So, Luke, mate, I think it might be like now might be a really good time to have a talk about the challenges that you've been through from a mental health perspective. You open to that?
Yeah, 100%.
Cool,
100%. And I think like sharing my own, even now when you go to share it, like as happy as I am to, there is for me, it's almost like an instant sense of guilt, because you automatically think that you haven't been through something tough enough to feel this way. And for me personally, I've been honest the whole time I've chatted with people, I didn't have this significant traumatic experience that unfortunately a lot of people experience and go through. And I didn't have back-to-back days where it was just the grind was bring me down sort of thing. For me, it was the one instance that really broke me was just something really minor in my career path that for anyone else, well, I assume, look, this is one of those assumptions, right? When I say for everyone else, they'd be like, sweet ass, let's get on with it. And maybe I'm wrong in assuming that. But for me, it sort of like, it just struck me. So what happened was I just completed my master's and had done really well. And if I'm going to be honest, I haven't probably faced enough hardships in my life in regards to testing my own resilience maybe. But in this circumstance, I'd felt like I'd done everything in my career leading up to this certain point, including going above and beyond with cross-curricular, co-curricular, all the elements within education to get to that part. I thought, well, right, when this job comes up, it's a sure thing. Not a sure thing, but, a good chance. So anyway, I went through this position and I missed out on this position. And that wasn't the part that broke me, because I had a good chat about it and I was like, sweet, now I know that to get to this, I have to do this, right? And because I feel like I'm a reasonable person in regards to I can see steps and I can know what I have to achieve before I can achieve that sort of thing. So once that was there, I was like, okay. And then I went for that one, and which was like a step below, and I missed out on that. And I didn't get feedback about that. And it was during my exit interview for the topper, not the topper, that doesn't make any sense, but the higher role, that I was sort of told, look, this is what you need to do. You need to be going for this. And that's the bit that broke me, the fact that it had been pointed out as something I should be doing. And then I missed out and I didn't get an answer. And that was just like, I've just committed so many years to this pathway, and it's all fallen over, and I was pissed. But that anger sort of went away, but the darkness that came with it didn't. And I just thought, I was processing it, and I was like, my temper was short. I was finding it really a real struggle to sort of get motivated for things. But I thought it was just a phase or whatever. And it wasn't until I had a visit from my father-in-law, and he come across for the weekend, and we had some good yarns and stuff. And whether my wife had talked to him or not, I'm not sure. But when he left, he said our goodbyes, and then he rang me back later that night. I was really confused because I'd just seen him. I thought maybe he's left something in my house, but he rang me up and he goes, look, how's it going? I said, mate, you've just left. Things are good. And he's like, no. Look, I know what's going on. And it was like just someone to see that in me, to force myself to be honest. And I was like, fuck, mate, no, you're right. No, I'm not good. And yeah, that was like the turning point, as in recognizing my own behaviors that I was displaying that, weren't positive. That's the short temper with the kids, the distancing myself from colleagues and friends, the pulling away from probably some of that physical activity that I know keeps me balanced and well. And that sort of, that was just one instance like that really sort of brought everything to the forefront, I suppose, of conscious thought. A lot of these things occur without really consideration. And that sort of brought everything to the front. It was like, okay, these are the things I need to deal with right here.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, man. I appreciate that.
Right.
And like, I think it's so true. Like, especially as Kiwi guys, we're habituated when someone says, how are you? Like, oh, you're good. Oh, not bad. Yeah, sweet.
Yeah.
And like the point that you made about I could be honest with myself then is that I think that often we tell ourselves that as well. It's like, I'm sweet, I'm good, I'm okay. I'll just keep pushing through and something will happen. But like the fact that your father-in-law asked you that question allowed you to be open and honest with yourself, first of all, which then kind of opens the door for, oh shit.
Yeah.
What do I need to do about this now?
Yeah.
And what did you do about it?
Oh, yeah, like he just called me on my own shit story. He knew. And that's why we called our tour the Sweet Nah Tour with the Lighthouse Project, about the fact that when you hit each other up and you're like, oh, sweet. It's like, well, actually, nah, I'm not sweet. Honestly. So what do I do about it? Man, I started chatting. Like I made a conscious decision from that point that if anyone was going to ask, I was going to be honest. And so when I went back, caught up with some colleagues, and they knew, because I wasn't hanging about, I wasn't wanting to spend a lot of time with people, shooting off. They knew that something was wrong. And so when they asked, I was like, nah, I'm not. I'm processing this because it sucks. This didn't work out. And like, even talking to you now, it seems so trivial. And some people will be like, what is this dude whinging about? And I'll be the first to admit, I would never have thought something so minor could just rock my world, and yet it did. And so I never perceived or thought that something like that could shift my mentality so quickly and so easily. But getting out of it, sort of, the first thing was about, man, 100% just be honest, because we do have this thing of, if you're asking someone how they are, not often you're prepared to hear the answer you don't want to hear, right? So we instantly, as society, if we hear, oh no, my day sucks, you're like, oh, come on, man, shut up. Be positive, right?
Don't be a dick.
But unfortunately that's the reality, but that's not the way we move forward. And so it was about, like, first of all, be honest with myself and others, be willing to listen, don't jump straight into a judgment. And then that was that whole conversation aspect. But then the flip side of that was, what are the things that make me happy? What are the things that balance me, I guess, or keep me on an even keel? And that for me will be different for others. But for me, that was definitely saltwater therapy, whether that's spearfishing, surfing, fishing, whatever, just getting in the ocean, being active, So whether that's on a social touch team or any of those sports, or, you know, going for runs, being active with the kids, yeah, all those sorts of things. And, you know, yeah, this is following a slightly different path, just with do some of this educational research, and they talk about this this attention restorative theory around the fact that we're constantly caught up in days where we are consciously making decisions, that we go under a state of decision fatigue, where we find it really hard to make decisions or decisions that benefit us. And so it looks at what are the things that make us react without consciously reacting. And so they call it that sense of wonder, those moments where you're like, oh, that was cool. And so a lot of those activities that I've identified are those moments that provide that, there's moments of wonder, whether it's catching a wave, finding a fish to shoot, or whatever, those things that you can't predict, those things that you can't forecast or make, I don't know, real conscious decisions around. I think there's a close tie there. But yeah, I think being honest and returning to the things I love, that were the things that sort of helped me a lot in that little process out of it.
Nice, man. And from a neuroscience perspective, that sense of awe, that sense of wonder that you get as well, what that does is that switches off something called the default mode network in your brain. And the default mode network is like when you're kind of hanging out in self-absorbed thought, not always negative, but like, you know, that like when the voice is running through your head, probably 8 times out of 10, it's not that positive for you. There's a bit of, why did you do that for? And 100%. So on. So that, switching that off and getting into a state of awe or getting into a state of wonder or gratitude, that's what it looks like from the neuroscience perspective as well. So it's cool to hear about it from the educational perspective as well.
Yeah. It's always interested me. Just sort of clung to that once I heard about it. I was like, yeah, that makes just so much sense. Those little things that you see or hear or experience that just make you smile, right? It might be something as simple as that. Those are the things that sort of push everything else out of the way instantly without even trying. And so I guess if you can expose yourself to as many moments in a day that provide an opportunity for wonder or a release, then yeah.
And I think like when you start to look for it as well, you're able to see more of it. Like with kids as well. Sometimes you're like, oh, just put on your pants, come on. But then, and you get really frustrated with it. But then if you just flip your perspective slightly and say, like, this kid is learning how to put on his pants, and just like laugh at him. And it's pretty amazing just to watch, just with a quick perspective shift. To go from frustration to wonder as well. And like where I live in Wellington, we're super lucky that there are just so many birds around. Like we go up to my parents' place in Hawke's Bay and they're like, oh, there's this tui on the fence over there and it's like 50 meters away. And I'm like, I sit on my back deck in Wellington and I can see 20 of them like within 3 meters. But it's pretty cool, like when you start paying attention to even just kind of stuff that's around you that allows you that sense of wonder. Like you're in Tauranga at the moment, I'm in Wellington. We're sitting here having a conversation over the internet after probably not having a conversation in a couple of decades. Like, that's pretty awesome.
Oh mate, it's unreal.
Mate, when you one thing that I want to pull on a little bit and kind of pick at is how you said this was something small that tipped me over the edge, and like obviously it had a big effect on you, and you felt that it was small at the time. Like looking back at the moment, like do you still feel some guilt or around that was something that happened when like a whole lot of other people go through really big traumatic stuff?
Absolutely. Like I'm still embarrassed to think about how I might have reacted or whatever, but man, you got to experience these emotions and it's no hiding from them. And I can't explain to anyone who's out there listening or that I've met who might have been through something so horrific and just bounce back about why they've been able to do that and why something in my eyes was so small, yet just like, yeah, it's I still can't put into words an appropriate explanation as to why I reacted a certain way to something like that, as opposed to other people might, it'd be so minor impacts, I just, yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's people out there that have unfortunately been through some really, really tough stuff and and have some mental health challenges. But I think probably the bulk of people that face mental health challenges haven't been through anything like ridiculously hard or really, really traumatic. And these things happen to everybody. And I think, like, if you were to go through a similar situation now, it probably wouldn't affect you.
No.
In nearly the same way. And maybe if you were to go through something similar 10 years before then or 5 years before then as well, it may not have affected you the same way as well. Like, everything happens kind of within a context, and that context changes over the course of our lives as well, based on all of the other stuff that's going on around us. And like, obviously now you have more skills than you did then, but like, I think we do ourselves a disservice when we have a reaction like that, and then we almost belittle ourselves with it, because it's something that's happened, and it's happened for some reason. And like, there's so much stuff that goes on with our bodies that we don't know a reason for.
100%.
And like, we know heaps more than we knew 50 years ago, but in 50 years time, we'll look back and we're like, oh, these guys were just in the dark. So like, there might have been a whole raft of other stuff that you had going on at that point in time as well, that kind of helped to trigger the reaction.
100%. 100%. And there's like, I mean, other times in life where I guess the shadows have crept in, or the black dogs crept in a little bit. And one that I've talked about with others is when a man becomes a father for the first time. For me personally, you shift from a guy who doesn't have too many responsibilities to someone who is not only then responsible for their spouse and their well-being during a testing time, and whether that's financial or whatever, but also the fact that you've got this person, this young being that you are ultimately responsible to ensure that they're safe and warm and well-fed, and not only that you're setting them up for the right pathway, and that you're making the right choices about the myriad of things that come up on a daily basis. And that was another time where it was just like, holy shit, this is just so overwhelming. And the pressure was coming from no one but yourself. You talk yourself into this sort of state of like wanting to do your best by the people that you invest in and that you feel you're responsible for, and they are certainly not applying the pressure, or they may or may not, but it wasn't in my case. But it was just the fact that you just lump and you just put it all on your back, and that was another time where you can feel it coming in. And that was a different circumstance altogether, and the way I coped with that was a whole different way as well. It was no quick way out of that one, because some of the things that bring me wonder in my day-to-day existence now certainly weren't available as often when you've got a newborn, because you can't just shoot off and go diving for a day or spend a lot of time surfing or whatever. And so I did shift or change my behaviors then to sort of make sure that I wasn't going to head down too much of a dark space.
Yeah. What were helpful shifts for you at that point?
For me then, one of the best things was, and it sort of was, forgive the pun, born out of the circumstance that I was in, right? It was the fact that I had this, particularly with my first boy, who just didn't believe that sleep was important, and like, phenomenal. And so we were doing 5-hour shifts a night where the other person just wasn't allowed to be woken up for 5 hours. And we just rotated for the night and then carried on throughout the day. But it was that whole scenario of, and a lot of people will experience this, they get home from work, if they are the one out at work, and it's almost like at the door, here you go. And it's and for me, I'm really fortunate, because I was teaching, and that might occur at like 4 o'clock, rather than a lot of people who unfortunately might have to work until 6 or whatever. So that was like generally late afternoon, maybe sleep / witching hour. And the one thing that I knew helped was chuck the young fella on my front and walk for an hour or two, or whatever it took to just calm him down, but also to give my wife a break at home and just reset the evening or the afternoon. And it was during that, man, I just chuck him in the front, chuck a rain jacket on or whatever, and I just walk. And it was during those moments where, yeah, he might cry for the first 15, 20 minutes, whatever, but eventually he'd settle, and then most times he'd fall asleep. And it was like, I just accomplished something, you know, and at the same time, I'm walking and having that time, that bonding time, and a time to reflect and think about the day. But it's thinking about the day and reflecting from a positive point, because you've got that connection, you've accomplished something. Even if it's as simple as you got him to sleep, like that is a massive win. And reflecting about that from a positive standing point was just one of the things that I was like, okay, from now on, I'm just going to walk him, and I'll chuck him on my front or my back or in the pushchair until however old he becomes, but that'll be one of my things. And yeah, it helped a lot.
Yeah, I feel you on the babies that don't like to sleep. That's a good one. We also did the shift work, and for me, I think what was helpful then as well is that trying to find a little bit of space for myself as well. It was work, kids, no sleep, bit of sleep, kids, work, rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
And so for a while there, like while we were doing shifts in the night, I'd get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'd go to the gym.
Yeah.
And I'd just go and move stuff around for 45 minutes and then come home for 6 o'clock for the kids to get up. But just having that period of time where like it was just me, I could move my body, and I just created some space where the only responsibility was me.
Yeah.
That was all I had. And I would turn on like some weird country music band that I found. I was just crank this up as I did stuff.
Yes.
The Dead South, if anyone is interested. I don't know why I like them, but they are good.
Yeah, no, I've heard of them. They're good.
And so what's the plan with the Lighthouse Project moving forward, Luke? Like, what are you guys doing now that you have completed your tour around the lighthouses of New Zealand?
Yeah, sweet. So like we had this target of trying to hit 100K, and we didn't quite get there, but our initial push got just over 50 grand. And I guess we're in this really comfortable position right now where we've sent the grant applications out to those organizations just so they can identify what it is they need and how we might best help them. And so that's a really cool experience that we're going through at the moment, is because we shined a light on who they were and what they were able to accomplish and what their goals were for the communities. But now we're actively be able to just go, you guys are awesome. Here's 5 grand, here's 10 grand. So that's the process we're going through at the moment. On the back end of that, the Thames Rugby Club were outstanding. They had a jersey day for us, charity day. And the players in their community were unreal throughout the afternoon and evening. Went through this jersey auction, and look, we turned up helping out and having a cold bun with the players and the staff and things. And my expectation was, man, if we walked away with $500 and we also got those, you know, because there was 2 teams, those 40 something players thinking about mental health in a different way, then that's a massive win, right? And we couldn't believe it that the auction started, and one of the young fellas that I'd coached and played against when he was a bit younger, he's just come out of the Hurricanes squad. So he had put up this Hurricanes jersey, and it went for $1,700, the first jersey. And then it just, first Thames jersey came up, and it went for $700. And you're like, holy moly, this has just exceeded all of our expectations within 8 minutes. Yeah. And that ended up raising close to 16 grand over the evening. And so, yeah, we pulled this 50 something together for these organizations via our Give a Little and our corporate sponsors. But then in one afternoon, we're able to, achieve this just via the generosity of that Thames community. And so that there has been set aside for, there's some grassroots ones that have just started up recently within the Bay region. And the concept heading forward at this stage for the next couple of months anyway is to look to support the smaller ones that are opening up, because I guess the real danger of anything is if you just create the one model, sometimes it's only going to fit a certain percentage of the population, because not everyone wants to go sit through a therapy session. Not everyone wants to go sit down and have a feed with people and talk about it. So all of these organizations that we're looking to help offer different perspective and a different means to address what it is that people need to chat about and to work through. And so one of the things is to support those smaller ones that are starting up. The second thing is we're looking to create a more specific nationwide registry of organizations that people can reach out to find something that they might need. And whether that's a young fellow called Christian Reed, he runs this one, Lucky to Be Alive, where he takes guys out who are in their 20s and takes them on like little adventures via rock climbing or abseiling or whitewater rafting, things that put people outside their comfort zones, increase their heart rates, but it's for that age group and that's age group and that sort of person, and that's not going to suit everyone. So if we can create a registry of all these organizations that offer these different things in these different ways, then, if I'm someone who's struggling, or I know of someone who's struggling, I can find something that probably going to best suit them and best help them in their time of need. And so that's sort of what the Lighthouse is looking at going forward. And then next year, whether or not we do another tour sort of depends on our wives, but it's definitely at this stage going to be shorter than the 12 days, because we all came back to manic workloads, kids that had missed us, lawns that had overgrown, and wives that sort of needed to have some space themselves. So yeah, that was a one-off length.
Yeah, it might be kind of Olympic cycle.
Yeah,
every 4 years you do that one. Awesome, man. That's really, really cool. And I think like your point on there's no one size fits all approach with health or mental health. Like everyone responds to different things and everyone gets value out of different things. And yeah, like heaps of people are going to get value out of a therapy session, 100%. But some more than others.
Yeah.
And some not at all. And like we were talking about as well, is like at different points in your life, you're going to get value from different things as well. So I think kind of bringing that visibility to all of these people who are out there, who are doing absolutely fantastic work, and being able to almost like Tinder for mental health. Is that you can kind of swipe on the one that you want. I don't know. I've never used Tinder, so I don't know what it's all about.
I'm not sure how you explain this one with your wife.
She doesn't listen to the podcast. Oh, nice, bro. One the other thing that I was interested in as well is that like you being in this space and you obviously being quite visible around the mental health, mental well-being space, how have your students responded to that? And have you had any conversations? Has that sparked some conversations there as well?
Yeah, like for a number of years though, like for instance, we created this document that the kids access, and it was like a school version of Instagram, but you were posting a photo and a comment of something you're grateful for in a day. So you're not trying to show off a holiday. You're not trying to brag about something. It could be as simple as, the sun. And like, I'm just grateful that we've had a day of sunshine this July. But so I've always been keen to share my concepts of what mental health can look like in regards to what are some of the things that we can do to sort of recenter ourselves or restart the day. And so in regards to the Lighthouse Project, they're aware of it and they've talked about it, but it's not something that I put too much in my classroom or within my schools. But man, we have conversations daily with different students about different things, and it might not be called mental health. And there's always going to be, well, I hope not there's always going to be, but there is a stigma still attached to it. And a lot of young people aren't going to be in a position to be confident enough to say, yeah, I'm struggling with this element, my mental health needs work, whatever. But there are a lot of young people who are going, man, I'm struggling with this. I don't know how to bracket it or label it, but if you talk to any teacher out there, particularly within the last 3 years, it's huge. We have a declining attendance rate nationwide. We have increasing anxiety, and the circumstances of COVID have certainly drawn to the fore and increased that fear that already exists within teenagers, particularly around social and interactions anxiety. So more needs to be done. How we approach it is still, if people are still playing catch up themselves on how they feel about having to go to work with these things going on. So yeah.
I mean, it's great to see that it is like front and center of conversation.
Yeah,
now,
100%.
or at least like when we were at school. What was mental health?
Yeah. Oh, I just think back to some of the things we used to call each other, and
yeah, sorry about that. If anyone from school is listening and got stuck into you one time, apologies.
Yeah, I think I've apologized to most people that you just catch up with at weddings, or you're like, look, sorry man if I said something and but yeah, it's certainly a different state of society then. And man, you look back to the way I can't speak for you, but the way you're brought up with my father and then his father, and it's, we're getting better and we're getting more aware and we're becoming more open, but we're not there yet. They certainly weren't there, but this whole thing, I've been able to have honest conversations with my dad, and that's been cool,
Yeah.
and he's been honest, and that's been remarkable. He's come from a dad who was, ex-war, right? And so feelings aren't something men feel. So to have that change, and there's those subtle shifts in what is seen as appropriate and not, has been cool.
Yeah, that's epic, man. And that's really cool. And to think that like this is happening within a generation as well. These conversations and these shifts, like it feels like hard work while you're in it, and it feels like it takes a long time. But to kind of look at the 20 years from when we were in the position that these kids were in to now, and the shift and awareness of it, and the shift in resource around it as well, as to how we can do it better. And like it's still a problem, and it's still a challenge, and there's still a lot of work to go, but like I'm optimistic about it, I think.
Oh dude, 100%. I think the way I talk to my son now is hopefully opening up a sustained pathway of honesty and self-reflection, and just a greater connection about what's real and what isn't real. And then if I can do that, then hopefully he grows up to be this great young man who maybe doesn't call his mate a certain name or whatever, and then if his mate's struggling or he's struggling, he can be 100% honest with him, and from that, hopefully we see that devastating statistic that New Zealand has dissipate, right?
Yeah. Indeed, man. Look, if people want to check out the Lighthouse Project or find out more about you guys, like where's the best place for them to do that?
Oh, probably the easiest way is Instagram, Lighthouse Project NZ. And if you jump on there, have a look. I think we've just reinstated the Give a Little page for our next drive heading the future, but that's got our links to our YouTube and social media. But yeah, reach out if you want and have it and check us out. There are so many cool organizations that do similar things, so don't be afraid just to stick to us and look for us. There's mental health, and then there's For All the Brothers, a pretty cool one.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, so check those other guys out. They're pretty cool.
Awesome, man. And I'll link all of those up in the notes for the episode as well. Luke, I want to ask you a couple of questions that I like to finish on with people. The first one is, now, what ways do you go about proactively building your capacity for challenge?
Probably one of the best things for me is putting myself outside of my comfort zone, like knowing I'm actively going to do that. So in recent years, I've been trying to like run a little bit further. So I know that every time I push myself to a point where I'm in exertion or I'm struggling to breathe, certainly some of these other things shift out of your mind, but also you learn more and more about yourself and what you're able to accomplish or deal with. So that's probably been one of the biggest things for me personally is knowing that was my limit, but that is in the past. I'm stronger than that now, and being open to doing it again, but going a bit further or whatever. And I think, yeah, it's easy to be comfortable in life, and it's easy to fall into what can be perceived as routine, but can also be perceived as a rut. And I know that contradicts a lot of people when they talk about the fact that routine is actually one of the key things to get you out of a dark space. But I think there's a balance between getting yourself out of something, but also preventing yourself from falling back in.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement as well. As I think routine is really valuable, but you can have routine and then you can also add a little bit of stretch in there as well.
Spice it up a bit.
Yeah. Sprinkle something on the top. Mate, do you have any helpful frameworks that you use when you're approaching a challenge?
Oh, so let's say that I'm going through a bit of a challenge with work at the moment, and for me, I've got to chip away. Like at university, maybe I could have stayed up the night before and got it all done and scraped through, but that's not helping me. And so for me personally, if it's something that I know is going to be a challenge mentally or physically, it's about getting started as soon as possible, taking that first step, whether it's sit down and get some planning done straight away, whether that's, man, it's raining and I've got to train for a run coming up, but it's raining and cold. Just put some shoes on and go get wet. You can always come home for a hot shower, but it's making sure I take that first. Don't listen to yourself sometimes about, nah, sweet as, do it tomorrow or whatever, because that's when you sort of might fall back into a pattern of, taking things too easy, I suppose.
Yeah. And how do you keep yourself healthy now? What do you do on a day-to-day or a week-to-week basis?
There's several different things, right? Because to keep myself physically healthy, like, trying to eat some good foods throughout the week. So it's try to stay away from the takeaways and trying to ensure that I'm getting the good fuels within me. And then the flip side of that is trying to ensure that I'm getting some sort of exertion. So whether it's a run or a swim or a surf or whatever. But then it's also important for me, like, get rid of devices before bedtime. I'm not saying everyone needs to become a reader, but I love reading. The fact that I'm able to shut my book and everything else is gone because I've just been experiencing a different world via this text. But I think it's really important to get off the social media and the devices before bedtime, because I feel like that can be, for some people, that little trigger for a spiral. And do that before sleep time is pretty poor, because sometimes it sort of manifests itself as lack of sleep or things like that. And then it's that wellbeing cup, right? And for me, one of the biggest things I've tried to do in the last sort of 24 months at least is acts of service, like doing things for others, not because you're asked to, not because you're told to, but because you want to, and seeing the positive outcomes for them is so rewarding for yourself that it becomes a little bit addictive, like going out of your way to improve someone else's day, you can shift your whole psyche for the week. So there's different elements, reaching out to mates, but so that well-being in physical health and mental health, and there's so many different little pieces to that puzzle, as you were talking about before, right?
It's all connected and they all feed back into each other as well. So no, it's awesome to hear how you do it, mate, and thank you so much for coming and getting uncomfortable with me today. It's been amazing to have a chat with you about what you've been up to.
No worries. Hey, thanks so much for reaching out, and certainly envious of what's in the Wellington water. You look about 22. And
bro, it is freezing. It's like 12 degrees. So it's cold water therapy every time you get in.
I'm going to move.
Yeah. Just ice baths, eh? Awesome, bro. Thank you so much for getting uncomfortable with us today. I always love these conversations. If you want to hear a guest, if you want to have a topic explored, if you want to ask a question, please send an email to chris@healthmentors.nz and we can get onto that for you. If you want to support the show, the best way that you can do that is subscribe on your favorite podcast app and make sure to share it out with some of your mates as well. Thank you to Health Mentors, the sponsor of the show today. If you want to improve your health and your performance in the middle of a chaotic world, make sure to check out healthmentors.nz or send an email to chris@healthmentors.nz for a no obligation chat. Thank you so much to my brother Jeremy Desmond for the amazing theme music to the show. And thank you to you guys for tuning in and listening all the way to the end. We'll see you all again next week.